Here we are again, Chancey.
Good morning, Brad. How are you doing, sir?
Golly, buddy, I'm a little older than the last time we got together to talk about something.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
My goodness gracious. We got to apologize for that.
Yes.
But boy, spring has sprung.
Yes, and spring, as y'all know, is the busiest time of year for the both of us.
Oh, my goodness. So since we talked to you last, we've got corn in the ground growing. We've got our hay grazer in the ground growing. Man, cotton is trying to grow if it could possibly get some rain around here.
I've put in tons of dove plots, tons of deer plots, summer and spring food plots. And
Chancey's been traveling all over the country.
Yes. Been a busy March and April and even in the end of May. But now my schedule, everything that I had on schedule as far as planting and getting that done for the spring, I've got that caught up. And so now I'm doing more herbicide type stuff.
Well, and on the farm, it's been so dead-gum dry.
Yes.
Usually we'd be rolling and blowing and going, baling hay right now. But, man, alive, if you're anywhere close to Texas in general, I guess, as a state, you've seen more of the state than I've seen.
Oh, it looks like it's just awful out there west of I-35, and in South Texas, it just looks like the moon. It's real spotty. It's kind of funny I drove from Dripping Springs all the way to Marshall, Texas last week, and then back and forth, and it's areas in the east look really good, but there's some dry spots too. It's just that the rains have been so spotty, and so you really see it when you drive across the landscape. But that's for central Texas. But you get out west and south, it's pretty serious out there. It really is. A lot of my stuff that I've planted, it needs to be rain bad. My food plots, they're just look pretty skimpy right now just because they haven't got the rain.
Yes, and the crops in our area out there, since we've planted our corn out there, since the corn has come up, we've gotten a total of 4/10 of rain, and that was, early March when we planted that stuff, and it was too wet back then to get in there and plant it, so we're still surviving off of some ground moisture. I don't know how long it could hold out for, though. We've got 100-degree weather all this week.
Yeah.
And corn pollination is dinged pretty bad when the temperatures get that hot. And it's a year that we didn't need anything bad to happen with the input costs like they are,
yes,
with the markets as high as they are, with the world and as short of food supply as it is. And here we are.
Yeah, wheat. The whole situation with wheat is mind-blowing right now, what's going on. And
we're probably looking at, on the average, 30 bushel wheat in this area this year. It's not going to be no bumper crop, but we'll be blessed to make what we make this year.
Going to add to the situation where even worse.
It is. Mm-hmm. It is, and so it's looking pretty rough around Central Texas right now, and most parts of Texas, I guess, too. Especially the high temperatures and dry weather combined equals disaster, I guess you'd say.
Yes, and
might be a year for the crop insurance.
Sure, and just to add to that, since the last time we talked, I think I spent the last 2 weeks of March down in South Texas, just north of Tilden, in between Tilden and Pleasant, and I was down there for 2 weeks straight, and we were doing cactus surveys, doing the black lace cactus, which I've told you about the endangered species, and most of the time they were always blooming that time of year. We're doing the surveys when they're blooming. Even the cactus are shriveled. It is dry.
Was that the cactus you sent me with the real pretty little pink flower?
Yeah, that is
a beautiful little flower.
Yeah. It showed all the beetles and stuff that was in there. Remember I did that one over pollination biology? I was talking about cactuses.
I'll have to put that on our Facebook page. That's a really pretty little cactus flower.
It was just so dry down there. Even the cactus aren't blooming, and a lot of the brush hadn't even popped. Haven't even bloomed yet. So across the state, it's really bad in places.
They have. I think they're talking possibly maybe 2 weeks from now, some kind of tropical storm's got a pretty good shot at coming to our area. Hurricanes equal disaster for the coastline, but golly,
they bring us rain if they hit around Houston.
Yes, it does.
They're in Central Texas, but those guys in South Texas, they need it actually worse than we do.
It's even worse down there.
Yeah, and they're used to being dry. That's just kind of a dry climate, but It looks bad down there, and in the hill country too. West of I-35, and across the state. We've actually in Milam County, as dry as we are, we look a lot better than a lot of the places I've driven to and driven through.
Yes, and I see you now. We're in like a very high wildfire.
Yes.
Danger situation.
Low humidity, high winds. Yeah.
Yes, and last year was such a good year. There's a lot of underbrush and different things.
Yes, lots of growth.
And speaking of underbrush,
yes, and brush, growth. We're gonna.
So that's what we got together to talk about today. Is brush control methods and ways to control that, because there's a lot of wasted resources. If you're talking in a pasture situation or a wildlife situation, where too much brush is a bad thing.
Yes, it can be detrimental from a wildlife cover standpoint, from a water infiltration and water table standpoint. So brush management is something we need to be thinking about all the time. And I just want to say it right now because it is this critical. Brush management, it is a process. It is not a project. It is not something that
well,
can
it's
be
native. I mean,
Yeah.
like a lot of these brush species are native to this
Sure,
country, and
sure.
so they're well adapted.
They're very well adapted, and so it's not something that we can start today and abandon tomorrow. It's a process on our property or on our ranch or whatever that, you just need to have it in there that you're going to probably be doing some form of brush control or brush management as long as you own that property, And it's just something to be thinking about. So a little bit to start can be, and not follow it up with a treatment later, can be just as detrimental or worse than not doing anything at all. Is when I mean it's a process, not a project.
So it appears that like with the overgrazing going on, the places are getting smaller, that type of thing. That it's one of the worst things you could do for brush is overgraze something, take the grass, take competition out. You'll have all kinds of little bad things coming up at that point.
So,
that's kind of how we got in the situation we're in a lot of these places.
Yes, huh? I mean, historically, most of our brush. Now, I guess we're talking when we just say when we're talking brush here in Central Texas or in Texas, a lot of people, it's mesquite and youpon that we're talking about. Both of these are native to our area. But
would you consider a cedar tree a brush?
Yeah, absolutely. I would. It is a tree, but you look at it out west, there's two different species of cedar trees in our area. You got the ash juniper over there in the hill country west of 35. You got the eastern red cedar over here. But yeah, I consider it a brush species. But it's the same thing. So the biology of these species affect their management methods. And I guess those are the three big ones that we're going to have in our area. But all of those were controlled historically by what we talked about, the fundamental processes that shaped the grassland ecosystem: fire, drought, and grazing by large herbivores. That helped. They were always here, but they were kept in sync, by those three processes. Fire being a big one.
Yes, if you like read up on it a little bit, you'll find out that when the early settlers came, they described the mesquite trees and stuff as being densely populated in certain areas and sparsely populated, like they called it mesquite savannas.
Yeah, in South Texas, mesquite in South Texas, and even in the rolling plains and the high plains, it's been there forever. We've got two species of mesquite in Texas as well, but the majority of Texas only has the honey mesquite. That's what we're dealing with, and that's what they were describing. But they described it in big mesquite savannas, like big bull mature mesquites, which are beautiful, nice trees, and they grow grass underneath them, and they savannas. And then some of them were mesquite motts, is what these guys were describing, as they went through. Mesquite motts, that held abundance game, provided cover, but it wasn't thick, multi-stem trunked, obnoxious brush.
They didn't have shredders yet.
Yes, shredders. So really where brush started becoming a really big problem is in the 1800s when we brought in here, and like I said, grazing is absolutely necessary, but we overgrazed most of Texas. We overgrazed.
Too much of anything is a bad thing.
Yes, too much. And so we overgrazed. We strung up barbed wire. We put animals in places and then never let them out. And then not only that, we started getting mechanical. Started people having plows and having this and saws and everything, cutting things down. And, these brush species respond differently to these different practices based on the biology of that, whichever one it is, mesquite, juniper, or youpon. And so that was the start of us getting a lot of the brush problems that we have today. But then also, too, just lack of fire, lack of fire coming through there periodically. We mentioned the Indians would set them, but, every spring and every fall and summer, even in drought, fires got started by, would start and they would burn, and it would burn till it hit a river, or it burned till
even
it hit a wet
Indians
spot.
would start fires back then to make wildlife push them a certain direction they wanted to push them. They would push them with fire.
Sure.
And a fire will take out a 2 to 3 year old mesquite.
Yes, it really will. There's lots of studies that fire rotation on a level will take care. It's not going to take out your big ones, and even if it does top kill them, more than likely they'll root sprout. But your 2 to 3 year olds, yeah, you can, that's one form of management right there that we would talk, a biological control of mesquite. And fire absolutely smokes cedar. I mean, fire takes it out because cedar don't root sprout. Now both species, eastern red cedar and ash juniper. So when you look at the hill country now, it's just cedar breaks. That's a lot of it was overgrazing, but then lack of fire Well, if you cut that cedar tree down and there's no green left on it, it will not come back. It's gone. And fire top kills mesquites, and it does not come back. So fire, historically, they say, well, the mesquite's so important for the golden cheek warbler, and that's true, no doubt about it, because the warbler, it's a component of their habitat. They use it to make nest material. And like I said, it's important. So it's a process. We need to learn to work together. But historically, a lot of that juniper was on the sides of mountains or in deep canyons and ravines and stuff, places where fire didn't historically occur. It wasn't out there on the prairie, in thick cedar breaks, because fire took care of it.
That's right.
And the system wouldn't overgraze. The grazing helped stimulate the grass, and then the bison would move on. So that whole system. And
we'll talk about that more here in a little bit when we talk about control.
Uh-huh.
But maybe it's more importantly to start off by saying that mesquites aren't all a bad thing. And now we're going to talk mostly about mesquites and youpon because that's what's big in our area and in our store here. It's where we get most of our people come in. What do you have that I can spray on our mesquites, or what's a good way that we can control the mesquites that we have?
Yeah.
Because they're in the black dirt, they're in the sand, they're pretty much everywhere.
Yes.
All across the state.
They sure
and
are.
they're not all a bad thing, though.
No, mesquite's a great tree from a wildlife standpoint and from even a human standpoint. I mean, you can make cookies out of the thing.
And the honey,
seeds
like
mesquite
honey, youpon honey, all that.
Everything eats the beans. Deer, they'll browse young stuff or cotyledon or very young one, but I've never seen browsing pressure on mature mesquite. I've just never, I haven't seen anything in it. But from the mast producing the beans, everything eats them. Deer, rodents, rabbits, coyotes, coons. When they're fruiting and they're putting beans or dropping, everything's out there eating. It's super high. It's got pretty good high in protein. It's the sugars. It's super high in carbohydrates and a lot of sugars, and that's why it's
a lot
sweet.
Of energy.
Yeah, that's why it's sweet. You chew on a mature mesquite bean. A lot of times they're sweet. That's why they call it honey mesquite, the one of a species. It tastes just like honey.
Is that? I have honestly never tried that.
And the trees are different. Like you chew on some, that one's not good. But once you find like one mesquite tree that makes, my mom had a mesquite tree in her backyard in Yearleton. And she planted as a little bitty thing, and she, it grew up into this beauty. But that was the best. She had a recipe for making mesquite bean honey or something, but
probably jelly.
Or no, it was cookies. Like you could grind them up, make it like a little flour, and then mesquite bean flour.
Now that's interesting.
And that tree that she had, man, you chew on those things, and it was good.
So boy, I tell you what,
the Native Americans used them extensively down. I mean, if it wouldn't have been for mesquite trees down in South Texas and in West Texas, Indians probably couldn't even survive down there. It was a big component. It was a huge deal. And there's in native range, a mesquite occurs in every soil type and every habitat in South Texas. It is a component whether you're in the riparian area, whether you're in a ramadero shrubland, whether you're in a mixed sandy loam, blackbrush community. Mesquite is in every component.
And they have their place. They're good for the soil.
Yeah, they fix nitrogen like a lot of legumes. And as long as they haven't been mechanically manipulated or tried to fight, they turn into generally a single trunk pretty tree, like those big bull mesquites you see in some of them places in South Texas. It's nice habitat. It's good habitat. You don't see much of it anymore, but really nice stuff.
Well, and like you said before, there's no better shade tree to sit under than the shade of a mesquite tree.
Oh yeah,
the leaves are just built perfectly for like air movement. I mean, it doesn't suffocate the wind. I mean, it moves through the tree. You'll see cows and stuff sitting under shade trees a lot. Yeah,
you out here, you got a post oak out there, a live oak tree, and you got a big mesquite that's about the same. Not that big, but a real big one. And on a hot day, those cows are under that mesquite tree more than likely because the wind can blow up under it. It's cooler under it. It just gets more airflow through it. And they're nice. They're the big ones are really nice.
Yes, and being a legume, they fix nitrogen in the soil. So the soils around the base of and within the drip zone of a mesquite tree are going to be a lot richer than the soils on the outskirts of the mesquite tree simply for that reason. And they're good for the ground. They produce good nitrogen for the soil, and it's just the fact of the matter that they cause flat tires.
Sure.
And then they spread like wildfire.
They sure do, especially once we start trying to control them. But if you think about it, we've all cut mesquites. Think about really big bull mesquites. They doesn't have much thorns.
No, they really don't.
They don't. It's the little ones that have been burned or shredded or plowed through.
Which are 97% probably.
That's what we're talking about. Yeah, 98%. Like I said, those mesquites as a component of diverse habitat and good habitat, That's not what we're addressing. Don't even worry about those. The system's taking care of itself. It's the ones that are causing us problems that are taking over our pastures for whatever reason.
And so there's a place
tackle.
out near me that years ago was a farmland field. It didn't have a tree or anything on it. They came around and they planted grass on it. I'm sure it was coastal at the time. I was too little to remember. And then the fences got bad for whatever reason, so they took the cows off of it. Well, the mesquites had taken this place over. I mean, we're solid out there. I mean, there's deer out there, there's cattle out there, there's hogs out there. It's in a creek bottom. So it's all the kind of things you could think that would spread mesquite beans around. And so I guess due to possibly overgrazing or something, again, I was too little to remember, these mesquites just got dense. I mean, not so dense that you couldn't walk through it comfortably, but they're pretty well scattered through this pasture. And since they took the cows off, the mesquites are still there that were there, but now there's no more new growth coming up. If you're not overgrazing and you've got good grass cover,
yes,
the new growth will take care of itself. And you think about that all the time. You're like, golly, if I leave one mesquite tree on my place, I'm going to have 10 million of these things in 5 years from now.
It's not
the truth.
Mm-mm.
And is what's surprising is how few of the beans actually survive. With all, like, whenever those mesquite beans hit the ground, there's lots of things that feed on those, like that destroy them basically.
Yeah, when they hit the ground, insects and funguses and all kinds of little small microbes and stuff start attacking them instantly because it's
and a lot of them never get covered with dirt or anything in order for them to come up. So
no, they fall right there, and I mean the nature takes care of that problem.
If you look at a mesquite tree out in your pasture, there's not 700 of them coming up around that mesquite tree.
No, that big one.
Like you would think, where like acorns off of an oak tree or something, you'll see those things sprouting like quite a bit around there. But you don't see like a whole lot of mesquites and stuff coming up, around that one tree for whatever reason.
No, the dispersal. I mean, the main, it just doesn't happen. Like once those hit the ground, insects and microbes and all kinds of funguses attack them. The dispersal mechanism for that mesquite is it's such a good fruit that something eats it, and the seeds really do well with being scarified through the digestive tract of a mammal.
Yeah, if you go walk through a cattle pasture and you have mesquites and you find a good old cow patty out there, you'll see little mesquites growing up. They'll be growing real nice and But I also read somewhere one time that typically those little mesquites don't survive because that manure dries out so quickly.
It does. It just depends on the season and what year.
Yeah.
That specific year. I've also saw people study even a PhD program. They. Or say a master's, which is most of these studies are based on masters. You've got a year of schoolwork and a year of field work. You got 1 year of field work, and that's that little snapshot, and you're going to try to base on that. Just look at the difference between last year and this year. If you were doing field
it's polar opposites.
So like some studies say that, but I've also read some studies that say that having them in the manure, 40% of them will successful.
Oh, that high?
Yeah. On the same study, like you can read these papers and, so and so, found this when he studied in the high plains, or so and so found that.
Well, now mesquites have a taproot, so granted that root grows in a hurry.
And it's very important too. So that's kind of the biology of the species of the mesquite. A lot of times, what we consider seedlings on a mesquite may be a 2 or 3 year old tree. Because it's spinning that mesquite bean, it's spinning the bean itself, not the whole long, but the seed inside the bean. It's putting a lot of its energy into developing a root system first, kind of like an oak tree.
And
very similar to oaks.
Blackland Research Center is one of the extension research centers in Temple, Texas, close to us over here. And I worked a couple summers over there when I was in college for some researchers over there. And I wasn't involved in the study, but there was a researcher there studying mesquites, and he took some PVC pipes and he planted those mesquite beans, and he did he let them grow for different amounts of times, and he had that PVC pipe split where he could take the PVC pipe apart and look at how deep the roots had grown on those mesquites. And being 18, 19 years old, and now I'm 42 years old, I still remember how in awe I was at how far down those mesquite roots had grown as compared to how much growth was on top of the ground.
It's unreal, isn't it?
I mean, it is unreal how long of a root.
That's their strategy. They're made to survive in some I mean, look where a lot of them's out, West Texas and South Texas.
Now, our Central Texas mesquites, they have some fibrous roots out there.
They can have both. They'll have a tap root, and then they also have some runner roots that'll go, 50 feet from the tree. They do have both.
They're well rooted.
Mm-hmm. No doubt, they're well rooted.
And so, but you can have too many of them, and,
Sure.
and you're never going to eradicate the problem, and you really wouldn't want to.
No.
But there is ways that you can manage the one that you have to where you can help to control what you have and keep it at an economic threshold, I guess would be the best word.
And one of the best ways to do that is biological control. Proper grazing and fire. You do proper grazing and you don't overgraze your property, and you don't to where it's like a bunch of bare ground, and you rest pastures. You move your cattle from certain, so there's never continuous year-long grazing, or if there is, your stocking rate's right. That's number one. That will help control a mesquite big time right there. Just having good grass out there. And then number two, you can follow it with a burning regime,
Not this year.
Not this year.
Yeah.
Every
but burning you could do any time of the year too.
Absolutely.
It's not one of those things that like chemical control, you got to hit the plant just at the right time. You got a window there where you got to hit it at.
Yes, sir.
But when you go to talking about like burning of mesquites and stuff, again, it's only going to work on like a 2 to 3 year old mesquite.
But even on your multi-stemmed ones though, if you don't, or even your bigger mesquite, if you don't top kill it, like you do a cool fire, you can raise the canopy.
Oh, okay.
And you can raise the canopy over through burning it,
and then you get less spreading that way.
Less spreading, raise the canopy, and get more sunlight in there. So you're going to try to create a mesquite savanna, kind of what's called. And I want to say, too, back to just a little bit of biology, mesquite is a pioneer species, y'all. And, I mean, I hadn't really, I could go into new areas and invade after something's been ripped. And I've got a buddy that has a place in Brady. He's got black-cap berries on it. It's got awesome quail habitat. The structure of the plant community on his property is laid out perfect for quail, and it wasn't anything that they did. It was just, but it took process of probably, I'd say, looking at aerial imagery, 50, 60, 70 years. But he's got these mosaics out there and these brush mottes that are very diverse, all kinds of different brush species in there. And in the very middle of that mott is an old dead mesquite that's still the stump there. So that place was 40, 50 years ago a scattered mesquite savanna, which has now turned into a very beautiful mosaic of good brush that's perfect for quail, perfect for turkeys, perfect for black-cap vireos. Or
was there management that went into that?
Not
or
so
it just
much management. It just
happened?
naturally wasn't over. It just naturally happened. That's kind of the natural system it took place. So Mother Nature will fix itself, but it's not going to happen in one generation in our lifetime.
Right.
If we're going to want to see some results, then we're going to need to step in and try to help it out. So mesquite serves its purpose, no doubt about it. But like I said, our problem is when it gets too much. And I'm sorry I went off topic there and I got off sidetrack, Brad. So where were we going?
So what we were talking about was how naturally controlling mesquites is the best way with not grazing too much, with fires another way. And these are ways that are good ways to control it. Not always feasible.
Yes.
Like this year, it's hard to not overgraze a place.
Very hard.
Because
Absolutely.
if you got one cow running, usually we're running a cow to every 2 to 3 to 4 acres here in Central Texas.
Yeah, on especially improved grasses.
On improved grasses, and so you take this year for instance, it hasn't rained in probably like in our area where I'm at, it hasn't rained in about 8 weeks out there, and so one cow to 20 acres is almost too much right now. So so the overgrazing part of that is out the window because nature's grazing it down for us because there's nothing growing. It was cool for a while, and we went from cool to hot. It's now the daytime temperature. We're gonna bump 100 degrees all week.
Sure.
And so this is a year that mesquites will probably do well.
Yes, I would say
they have what they need to survive in the drought and the heat.
And they don't need near as much moisture to make a good bean crop.
They're out there laughing at our newly developed coastal right now, going, "Ha, yeah, we've seen this before.
Yes,
yeah, we know how to handle this kind of weather."
And
it's going to be a year for them because they're gathering up moisture from deep down, and there will be probably a pretty good bean crop, I imagine.
Probably so.
And everything's going to eat it because there's nothing really else around for it.
Yeah, your livestock are really going to go after it too.
They will, yes, yes, and they're going to scatter them around, and so this is going to be a year for the mesquite, I'd say. As far as youpon goes, being as though I'm in the black dirt out there, it's not
Yeah.
near as the big of the problem what it is out in the sandy areas. But fire is a good way to control that too.
Fire is. That's what did it historically. But the problem is now it's so thick. It's so thick that you can't
If you got a
burn it.
fire, it would go.
Yeah, it'd burn. You had a canopy fire. You burn the whole forest down, and even then, like in order to burn through it, it's got to be dry, and then it's a danger. And then when it's safe to burn, there's not a fuel source in there to carry it through there. So you can try to control if it's not solid youpon. Leaf litter fires help. I do leaf litter fires on my place.
Well, you sent me that little picture of your progression that you have going where you did that leaf litter fire back in the early spring or late winter, maybe it was?
Yeah, early spring. Yeah, before the green up. So, and it's just a safe little fire that creeps through there, but it will smoke. I mean, literally smoke 2-3 foot tall youpons that
And
are
it
coming
did.
up. Yeah, it did. Yeah. Now, it didn't kill them. They're going to root sprout, but it sets them back, and lets more light get in there, and that light can get in there. And I'm not going to say, in those areas, y'all, it might take 3 fires to make a fire. So this was the third year I burned that same area, and it did better this year than it ever has before. So, that will help too, but so much of our problem is in those areas that didn't happen or they got overgrazed. And now that youpon is 8, 9, 10 feet tall and it is solid. There's no grass. You've got post oaks and hickories and then also cedars in there. Fire will take out your cedars too. I've got pictures of a 2 foot tall cedar that's dead from that little leaf.
From that leaf fire you
from that
started
little
this
leaf
year.
litter fire, yeah. And it's very safe, creeps through there. So that's an option, y'all.
A fire puts good things back into the ground.
Yeah,
Potash.
safe too. Safe, and if you do those leaf litter fires in the winter, absolutely safe. Doesn't go anywhere, or you can stop it very fast, is what I'm saying. That's an option for youpon there. But once, like you said, we always think of fire hazard being out west in Austin, and this ash juniper, which it is. I mean, I tell you, if I lived in places in West Austin this year, every time it got hot in summer and the wind blew over 20 miles an hour, boy, I'd be puckered up because there's some areas and some homes out there that I was like, man, one of these days it's gonna be something else. But we've got the same problem over here in Central Texas East, with youpon. That youpon, when it gets hot and dry,
That's some good kindling.
yes, it'll go up too. It sure will. So managing that youpon is important from a wildlife standpoint and mesquite wildlife standpoint and safety standpoint as far as fire hazards.
Sure.
So from juniper and youpon, 2 big ones for fire.
And so, with the biological control of it, I guess not overgrazing, is one of your main things.
Proper grazing, stocking rate's the main thing. If people try to follow the stocking rate for the productivity of their land and manipulate it and letting it rest a little bit, that will really help.
And then you got fire. That's about it, though.
Yeah, from a biological standpoint, those are the big ones to really kind of think about controlling brush. Now, you get a bad enough drought, Mother Nature will take care of brush too if it's bad enough. It smokes everything. But there's always a remnant left, and that happens. It does happen sometimes.
It very much does. And so that brings us, I guess, to the second method that you had to control it, which would be mechanical means.
Yeah, mechanical.
Now this, I don't know if it was an early way of thought, but people maybe at one point thought that maybe shredding was a way to get rid of a mesquite.
Yeah, let's just say that now. You
And
cannot
we're paying
shred
for that.
mesquite out. Yes, I'm paying with it big time. Lots of property owners are paying for it, and just say it. You can't kill mesquite by shredding. You can't shred it
But
out.
boy, can you make it worse.
Yes, and that has a lot to do with the biology of the species that we were talking about, Brad. So mesquite, once it gets its top messed with, and it doesn't, because you're not going to kill it, because it's got that root system. It usually resprouts.
So at some point, when it's a young little plant, the growing point of a mesquite is growing at the top of the plant.
Yeah,
You got your little dicot, you got the two little leaves.
the little leaves.
Yeah, and that's its growing point. But at some point in time, this growing point moves downwards towards the soil, and it gets to where it's like within an inch of the top of the soil, and that's where that thing's growing from at this point.
Yes.
And so if you don't shred it off below a growing point, which is pretty much impossible,
Yeah, you got to be.
you're going to get a bush.
Yes.
Yes.
Multi-trunk,
With a really big root system.
and they create monsters.
And so that's a
Yes.
problem for chemical control too, because now you've got a lot more underground growth than you have above ground growth. And to control something chemically, you've got to have a lot of above ground growth
Surface area.
to absorb chemical to get it down to the root system, because otherwise you're just spinning your wheels, because you got so much root down there gathering up so much energy and so many nutrients, I guess I should have said, and water and stuff, that it takes a lot to get rid of those roots.
Yeah.
And so you shred it off.
Mhm.
You've gotten rid of all the foliage and stuff, and boy, will it shoot a little bush out.
Yeah, it comes back, and 9 times out of 10, it's multi-trunked. You're not dealing with a single critter anymore. A single stem. You got multiple stems.
And every time you do that, it gets worse and worse.
Worse and worse. And I have a property right now that I'm working on that the previous landowner, he managed his mesquites by shredding them. And it's created a monster, and those are problem childs. They really are. And that's where I say it is a process, not a project. There's very few methods that you're going to go in there and just solve that problem, with 1 year or during one growing season once you create those little hard-to-kill ones,
Sure.
Without doing some serious mechanical work. Yeah, some serious mechanical.
And so, it's hard to get rid of those things mechanically, I guess you would say. The age-old method is if it's a big enough area, is of the root plow, bulldozer and root plow.
Yeah.
And so for wildlife, that's not exactly the best thing that you could do.
No, the root plow, we learned from years of, in South Texas, we learned the hard way about root plowing. We destroyed lots and lots of habitat in South Texas, thinking that the system would bring it back with diversity, like the diverse.
Like you get rid of that, and natural stuff will take its place.
Yeah, but, it just.
Well, it is natural stuff taking its place, but it's the wrong natural stuff.
And it may have been, but it's not going to happen in our lifetime. Like I said, the system will fix itself eventually, but it may take 300 years. So we.
It would probably fix itself even if we didn't root plow.
Yeah, even if. It would eventually take care of itself. In South Texas, we've done root plowing, and it has a place if you wanted to put it back right into pasture, or make pasture out of it. But if you were to root plow something and just think it would come back and have this beautiful diversity of everything, it's just not the case. It came back in pear and mesquite, very little diversity. And just was not good habitat, and then you're stuck with that.
And then you really planted all the mesquite beans and all. You really, covered all that stuff with dirt, spread the cactus around.
Yeah, the response from a wildlife standpoint just wasn't what we were wanting to see. Best thing, if you've got good, diverse, good mosaic and stuff, manage your numbers, stocking rate, and just let it maintain, let it do its thing. Because sometimes you can do more good thinking, it's just our naive and green, learning, as you go. You think you're doing good, and you might, it looks great the first year you did it. First 3 years, like, oh, man, patting yourself on the back, man, I did good. But 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you got
the same problem, if not worse.
Yeah. So just something to think about.
And the ground is a little rough.
Yes,
unless you really. But so I don't. You know more about this because you spent way more time in South Texas than I have. But what is that big chopper deal? That they pull?
Roller chopper.
The roller chopper.
Yeah, roller chopper. I've seen that used. A lot of times people would use it on mesquites, but that's a nightmare. Don't do it. You're just going to create the problem again because it's not going to kill it. But a lot of people will use it on like areas of black brush, where this brush is starting to get, and it goes in there and just it'll knock it back down and put it more in a deer's reach, make you can see a little bit better. It just kind of sets back succession, basically, is what it does.
It stunts it a little bit.
Yeah, sets it back. Say you've got some areas where black brush is getting really, really tall, and you want to kind of put it back down there and get some new growth on the ground level of deer. But, you don't want to roller chop mesquite at all, It's just going to, continue to add to your problem. You're going to have to kill it somehow or get the root out somehow.
I guess if you think about it, since the invention of a skid steer,
yes,
mechanical means of control have really changed. We went from only having a bulldozer to now having something that's more economical to purchase. Several people have those, and they're making all these attachments for them now that you can do all this different stuff with. And so I guess, Chance, since the invention of the skid steer, and not necessarily invention, but more people having them and more attachments being made for them, and it's becoming a pretty competitive market for this. There's different ways that you can that these things are beneficial. So, for instance, we leased this place several years ago, and it had been farmed years ago, and then they decided to just run cattle on these fields, and so we decided to put them back into production, and they had like densely, scattered mesquites out there. And so a cousin of mine, his name is Keaton Denao, he's got a business where he's got one of those tree pullers on the front of that skid steer, and he went out there and made easy work out of those mesquites.
Oh yeah, especially if the conditions are right.
Oh yeah, man, he went out.
Pull them out and get the whole root.
I'd say it was probably 50 acres back there or so, and he went back there, pulled them up by the root. Nothing came back out.
Yes.
It had taken me 2 years of chemicals in order to do that.
Yes, it would have.
And it had taken me a lot of walking with a sprayer to go out there and spray them. And he went out there, pulled them up, put them on a pile, and we burned them, and it was nothing to it that way.
That's good, especially for the ones, like we say, that have been manipulated. They've been top killing paths. Because Bradley's right. If the mesquites have been shredded or they're multi-stemmed and trunked, they're hard to kill with chemical. You may not, or very likely you're not going to get 100% kill that first year, and you might have to do repeated treatments on it. And the window's small, so you've basically got 1 year, and then, even if it top kills it, the chemical does. You don't know till the next year if you killed it when it starts to grow again.
That's
and then
exactly
you gotta
right.
Go again. So that's why Bradley's talking about the 2 years. Even with chemicals.
I mean,
it can be that way.
And getting to, I don't think chemical resistance has happened yet with the mesquites. I could have to a level that we just don't know about yet. But you got like your Johnson grass that we discussed before,
Sure.
where it's almost becoming resistant to Roundup.
Yes.
But it's still not resistant to a chisel plow.
No.
You pull a chisel plow over there a couple of times, and Mother Nature just hasn't figured out a way yet to beat that one.
Sure.
It's getting close, probably.
Yeah.
But same thing with these mesquites go. You go out there with one of those, hire somebody to go out there with. I wouldn't recommend buying one because, shoot, what does a skid steer nowadays run you?
I don't know. probably say $40,000-$50,000.
It takes one with some horses to do that. I mean, 70 plus horsepower probably.
I would think so.
With enough pulling power in order to pull something out like that. But I mean, man, like he come out there, he pulled all these mesquites up, piled them up, and the problem was done with.
Yeah.
It was no longer an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it worked out really well. So when the numbers are right, that mesquite pulling it works pretty good. And so another method besides this pulling would be like grubbing mesquite.
Yeah, and they have an attachment for that too as well, depending on
I think there's an attachment for just about everything
there
now.
There really is, man.
We own this feed store, and they make a sweeper that goes on the front of a skid steer now.
Hey, I'm telling you, I went and price checked one the other day. Now they make a no-till drill from Truax that goes on the front of a skid steer. And I'm like, I got to have one.
You ain't going to believe this, but I think there's one sitting on the lot over here at the John Deere dealership in town. There's a little no-till. It's a small no-till drill. It's probably about as wide as a skid steer.
Yeah.
I don't know what brand it is, but I was like, well, who would want such a small no-till drill with no wheels on it? I mean, like no kind of. But any money, that's what that thing is.
Well, I know that Truax is making, which is the drill I run. And when I saw that now they have one. I don't have a skid steer, but I've got 2 boys that do. I was like, man, this thing is so cool.
I mean, man,
they have
easy
any
to
kind
move
of
around.
Yes. Well, it's perfect for working around trees and in tight spots or on sides of hills where I can't get my tractor or whatever. I mean, it's got its place for sure. Now, you ain't going to be doing big places with it, but so to our point, y'all, they make an attachment for just about everything you can imagine for skid steers these days.
And sure they do, and like Chancey said, they make a little grubbing attachment.
Yeah, and they can grub those mesquites out there, and I think depending on your soil conditions and also because it's hard to pull those mesquites when it gets really, really dry.
But, it's
hard to grub them too. But
if you grub them, you don't necessarily have the growing point is pretty close to the ground.
Yes,
I think if you could break that off, relatively
you'll
close,
get them. Mm-hmm.
you'll kill that plant what's there, and I don't think it'll come back.
Yes, I agree, and I've seen places that's been grubbed. As long as they, didn't just like you said, shred or get it from the top, they get the growing point underneath the ground, your problem solved. I guess if you're looking at a issue of like grubbing is maybe leaves a hole, but then they have that little attachment on that grub, or not attachment, where they just cover it back up, all in one kind of motion. So it's depending on what method or your ground or source, soils is which you go for, which one better suits you, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's another method of control of that. And you wouldn't want to attack a 200-acre place that's just covered solid with mesquites with one of these grubbers.
No, yeah, especially the size of your mesquite.
I mean,
so you need to address, how
you're going to need tracks on your skid steer because flats ain't cheap to fix anymore.
No.
Tires aren't cheap to buy. I mean, and you're going to have, like we said, one with some pretty good horses in order to do that kind of work. But again, there's several people probably in your area who hire out to do that now. It's becoming quite popular in Texas for sure. You see a lot of people doing it, and again, Keaton Denio, he's here in the Cameron area. He's a cousin of mine, and he did that work for us and did an excellent job of pulling those mesquites up and doing that work. That'll work on youpon.
Yeah, you could grub them out. Absolutely.
Yeah, you could grab a youpon. You could grab a mesquite.
Yeah.
So I guess our next thing that we're going to talk about here is going to be mulching.
Mulching.
Yeah, mulching's another control method, and that's probably going to be more of a control method for
I agree.
youpon.
I agree. So, like, you could technically mulch mesquite, but you're not gonna. You didn't kill the growing part below the soil, so you basically it's less like shredding it. You got rid of what you're looking at for that year, but then you're gonna have to either get it by the root or spray it repeatedly. And when you mulch a mesquite, you're not killing it, because you're right on top of the ground. So mulching is what around here in Central Texas, and even for ash juniper and in eastern red cedar and youpon, a lot of people are doing mulching now. And it kills cedars. You take the top out of cedar, you're done. Mulching just like fire. But with youpon, you're not going to kill the youpon with a mulcher. But what you do is, from a wildlife standpoint, where we said those areas become super thick with youpon, and they're just not much use. It's not good Houston toad habitat. If you've got Houston toads, it's not good wildlife diversity because the sun can't reach the ground. You don't have the grass growing. It should have been a post oak savanna, but now it is a thicketized. So what people will do is go in there and mulch those areas, and that lets sunlight reach the ground. Sometimes you've got a seed bank there. You'd be surprised what comes up naturally if the soil can get warm enough to germinate seed bank. So mulching is very important in those situations, makes it look better, and then it gives you a result where you can come in and follow it up with a IPT, an individual plant treatment method for spraying it, depending on how big the property is. And people will come in there and hit it with an herbicide the next year, the youpon. Because youpon is easier to kill with chemical than mesquite is. I will just say that, in my opinion, especially if it's been manipulated.
Mostly because of a root system.
The root system, it just doesn't have. It's not a taprooted plant. It's more fibrous, shallower to the ground. You don't have the nightmare of the root system like you do with mesquite. So the control methods are a little bit different on them.
Chancey, I'm going to bring in a good friend of mine, Colton Shuffield, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about this mulching method because he's really got it down to an art. I follow a lot of the work that he does.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really starting to take the world over around here, especially the way, with people moving in and buying these smaller lots.
Yeah.
Needing to clear areas.
And it's economical.
Yes, it is.
And it also works good, like we said, from a wildlife habitat, how you're creating good habitat by opening up the canopy and letting sunlight hit. But it also helps with what we talked about earlier, fire danger.
Yes. Oh boy, and that's very important now.
Yes.
And especially if you're going to be in a subdivision of like a bunch of houses and stuff like that, you can't burn there anymore. You can't do things like that.
Yes.
And so this mulching has really found its place in the universe. And so we have Colton here with us on the phone. Colton, you with us, bud?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Colton, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Man, we're good, buddy. We're wishing it would rain a little bit, but so we could maybe go home and rest a little bit instead of doing all this work in the woods, ain't it?
I'm telling you, heck yeah.
But hey, tell us a little bit, Colton, about what you do with this mulching equipment that you have.
I don't know. We do a lot of trails, for people. We don't have any brush piles or nothing like that, so we go in there. We're clearing mainly youpon and cedar, kind of the trash trees, I guess. We're opening up the big old oak trees and giving them a little more sunlight and hoping to allow them to get a little more water and stuff. The cedars and youpons take a crazy amount of water from these big, nice oak trees and stuff. And what we're doing is, sir?
And I've seen some of the places you went into, buddy, and you're talking about densely wooded.
Oh, yeah, man. Some of these youpons can be up to 10 inches. I mean, I know a lot of people see 3, 4, 5-inch youpons, but these suckers get pretty big and 30 foot tall and all that good stuff. But
it's something else, Colton. Is what your equipment going in there mulching it. You're not doing hardly any soil disturbance either, are you? I mean, there's very little soil disturbance because I know a lot of those big oak trees. They don't like their roots really messed with, especially post oaks. And you can take out that brush all around it, and not
probably especially in a dry year.
Yeah, and not have any effect on the root system of those oaks. So that's another good aspect of that mulching.
Yeah, especially
Exactly,
in a year like this year, Colton, where you can't burn for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, my machines, I think the PSI on the ground pressure PSI or whatever on my ASV is like 4.7, and then on my big steel track machine, you think it'd be more, but I think it's like 3.6 or something. So I get a lot of questions about that from TPWD and that kind of stuff, and they're real impressed that the machines that I'm using and stuff got such a low ground pressure to help deter from disturbing the roots on these bigger oak trees and stuff.
So people go in there and they kind of mark the trees they want to keep and save, and you take everything else out.
For the most part, it's usually so dense. And I kind of have an idea, with what they want and stuff. I like keeping, more trees and stuff. So I get in there. I know the bigger trees we're going to keep and stuff. I'll get rid of most of the cedars unless they tell me not to. And the youpon and stuff. And that's usually what it is, and then you open it up and you got hundreds of oak trees in there that you really didn't know you had there in the first place. It's just it's a good deal.
Yeah, it makes for better wildlife habitat for sure.
Absolutely.
I've been hog hunting in some of those youpon thickets.
Oh yeah, well that's another thing too. Those youpon thickets are great cover for hogs.
That's true.
And there's not much good deer food, and not much. It's just a monoculture of youpon and cedar. It's just bad habitat, and it's the mulching is it's a good management method.
And you're not going to walk through that stuff and spray it.
No.
So I mean,
No.
and you're not going to root plow it very easily either, and it's too thick to use the tree puller method. So this mulching has its place in the world for that. And it like you said, it leaves the ground even better. And like on a year like this with limited rainfall, that mulch is also good for the ground for storing what little moisture that we do have. So you can cover quite a bit of ground with those machines.
Depends, I like it depending on what the customer wants. I can make it look like a park, and that's usually what I like to do. With the small machine, I'm looking at probably an acre and a half a day, just making it look real good. If someone doesn't want it that, nice, bigger chunk, stuff like that, we can cover a couple acres. My big machine, we're doing 2 to 3 acres real nice a day. And, it's when you're looking at bigger acres of land, I always tell people the big machine is the way to go, just as far as better for the client and stuff.
Sure, you cover more ground, more efficient that way.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much more efficient. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of your work done, and man, it's beautiful. And you've even got a method for this youpon where you put on your grapple and stuff after you mulched it the first time, and you can go in there and kind of rip the roots out of the ground a little bit, and go back in there and mulch it a second time, and that sure does help with youpon control.
Oh yeah, man, that's like on these smaller, like half acre lots and stuff. It's nothing for us to go in there and root rake them things and mulch them again, because the roots on those youpons come up fairly easy. They're kind of all connected too. It's like 5 or 6 big youpons on one big root system, and you get that sucker out, it just helps prevent them coming back.
Colton, you got a way that people could contact you?
Oh yeah, yes. I usually go through my phone. Send me a call or text or whatever at 254-482-0697.
Okay, so and Colton's located here in Central Texas with us around Cameron, but I mean, we're not too far from Austin where all the cedar issues are, and lots of people moving in and needing different things done. Y'all be sure and keep them in mind. Of course, I got to know Colton years ago when I taught him in high school, and he was a heck of a football receiver, believe it or not. Yeah, I went to college to do that. Yeah, he was a heck of an athlete. Now he's done just about gotten as old as I am. He's catching up with us pretty quick, Chancey.
I'm telling you.
Yeah. I still see him. You're always 17 in your hometown, but no, I'm proud of him. He's growing up and doing a good job. But Colton, we appreciate you, bud.
Oh yeah, and I appreciate y'all too. Y'all done a lot for me and all that. So thank y'all.
Hey, I hope you have a good weekend. What's left, bud, and we'll pray for rain.
Yeah.
All right.
Good talking to you,
here,
Colton.
man. Thank y'all.
See you, Colton.
Yes, sir. Y'all too. Bye-bye.
So we appreciate that, Colton. So I guess, following that up, Chancey, they're going to come back. A few of them are.
The youpon is, realistically, like I said, it's how much time do you want, because that's a time-consuming process to come back over there and really manicure. And on a place that's, on an acre, 2 acres, or less than that, it's probably not a big deal. It's probably worth going on to it. But if you're dealing with larger acreages and he mulches it and just gets it nice and fine, it's not going to kill the youpon. The youpon is going to resprout. But the thing is, youpon's easier to kill than mesquite, in my opinion, definitely. And it's best to come in after it resprouts the next year, or that year when it starts coming up, maybe a year later when it gets about a foot tall. Go in there and spray it. The state Parks and Wildlife recommends this, using spot sprayers. So you're talking about backpack sprayer and going in there, individual plant treatment with a mixture of 5.
Well, because you're going to have a lot of little trees and stuff that are going to come up.
Yes, when you open it up, you're going to have oak trees coming up. You're going to have
lots of stuff that you ain't going to want to just go broadcast control chemically out there. And
so
kill
it's going to be pretty selective. Go in there. Yopon's easy to identify, very easy to identify. Go in there with a mixture of about 5% Remedy Ultra. And about 0.25% surfactant, non-ionized surfactant.
Mixed with diesel?
No, just with water.
Oh, 5%?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So roughly 6 ounces of remedy per gallon, I guess?
Yeah, and and that individual spot treatment, on those plants. And so that's been, effective for them. And I'm almost positive that's the method that the state uses right there, when they do the follow-up treatment,
But like you said, it's going to bring a lot of stuff up. When you open that ground up, you'll be amazed at the things
there's going to be a seed source there, y'all. And you'd be surprised, depending on how long, you probably got a good native seed source. That stuff's just going to come back naturally.
And you got this good mulch on top of it now, too.
You got this good mulch, too. Yeah, that's there.
So to hold moisture, and Chancey could go in there and no-till drill stuff in.
Yes.
Okay, so once you get this done, if the mulch isn't too thick on the ground, it's so thick that it would suffocate the new little seedlings that you would plant. Chancey could take his no-till drill in there
and drill into the mulch.
And drill whatever you would like to put in there.
Sure. But there's some things, depending on the depth of the mulch and how thick it is, sometimes no-till drill doesn't work. Like I said, if the mulch is too thick, the no-till just won't get down enough to where I'm happy about it as far as seed-to-soil contact. Less than 1.5 inches. But there's other methods, and we've done it with the state, is gone in there and broadcasted. Number one, you don't know what seed source is there, what's going to come, so that's nice. So get your youpon killed chemically after you knocked it back, and you can reach it and manage it. Get it in there and get it chemically killed, and then you can go in there and broadcast. I've seen, believe it or not, I don't know the science and I haven't seen any studies about it, but for some reason I've observed it firsthand. You can broadcast those areas, specifically where the mulch is thicker, and the seed does really well on those natives. I don't know if it rains in there and kind of melts down in there.
It'll fall down in the cracks.
Got
the perfect cover, but not too deep.
Yeah, and believe it or not, it seems to respond very well with going in there, specifically if you can do it right before rain. Broadcast.
Hey, there was an old farmer, Alfred Rogio, told me one time, a neighbor of ours, he said the right rain makes anybody a good planter.
Amen to that. Isn't that true? Everybody's a good farmer.
Yeah, you could throw a seed out there on the concrete concrete parking lot out there, Chancey, and the right rain will bring it up.
Yes. So watch the weather on that method, but you can get good results. And so just so you're aware, if you go with that mulch method and that youpon, be aware that you're going to need to follow it. Like we said, it's a process, not a project. So you're going to need to do another follow-up, afterwards.
And that was a good point you bring up about running the wild hogs out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect place. I remember me and you being teenagers running through the woods chasing those hogs through those youpon
thickets.
They
bed in them, and they bay in them, those thickets, And when the youpons get that dense underneath those understories, it's really no good deer habitat anymore. It's no good Houston toad habitat. It's no good mosaic turkey. Turkeys can't run through there or walk. There's just no good habitat for other than a feral hog. Feral hogs go in there and create beds. They're safe in there. Nobody messes with them because it's so thick. And then they can eat all the acorns and stuff that fall off of the
sure, absolutely,
because that's what it is. In art, what we're talking about is these post oak savanna, and then it's just lack of fire, overgrazing, whatever. It's just solid youpon. But that's a method to deal with that we're dealing with now in Central Texas, and it is cost effective when you think about what it does, and what you can get, because you can take in there. You won't have any idea what your place could look like.
Oh, absolutely.
After that.
And you could even look, if you have a Facebook, you could go look Colton up on Facebook and see he puts a lot of the videos and pictures of the land he clears. His name is Colton Shuffield, COLTON SHUFFIELD. You go look at his name on Facebook and look at a lot of the things that he's cleared up and what we're talking about with this mulching, and it really does turn it into a park. I mean, it looks really nice, and you got some work to do after that, but you got less work than what you would have had you would have never got it down to that chemically to begin with ever.
No.
And so that brings us to chemical control.
Yes.
Okay, so chemical control has its place in the world,
Sure.
especially with mesquite.
Yes, especially with mesquites.
So everybody has a cheap little sprayer.
Yes.
A little backpack sprayer, a little pump-up hand sprayer, a little ATV sprayer. There's several chemicals. We happen me and Chancey go eat breakfast every Sunday morning before we record this with some friends of ours,
Yeah.
Matt Goodson, and so Jason Barton, another friend of ours. He's
we
a
went to
chemical
school
rep.
with him, and
Yeah, sure
awesome
did.
guy, knows his stuff.
He does. He works for Nutrien, which is they sell chemicals and all. We get a lot of our stuff. Of course, we farm and ranch, so we get a lot of our stuff through him and here at the store. And so, we got to talk. Actually, just have it. I said, man, I'm glad we ran into you this morning because, we have some questions here to ask you about chemical control of mesquites and youpon and that type of thing. And believe it or not, you've got your old school chemicals, like Remedy's the first one.
Yeah, it's been around triclopyr-based stuff, Remedy's an old, tried and true, workhorse, I guess. Chemicals.
In my opinion, chemical companies do a really bad job of advertising to people who are not in agriculture. You buy a 10-acre lot or something like that. You don't get the Southern Farming magazines. You don't listen to to RFD TV, and so these people they come in and they have no clue about a chemical control. Still, the old name tried and true is of course Remedy.
Mm-hmm.
Remedy Ultra. People come in, do you have Remedy? And we're like, yeah, we do. But we've also got Sendero, and Sendero's been around for a little while already.
Sure.
They're like, well, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the knowledge is not out there as much as you would think. Now, if you grow up in that world, well, you know all this stuff already probably. But there is several chemicals, and according to Jason, there's even a new one coming out this year by Bayer that's supposed to be really good, even better than what we've had before. Of course, you got your tried and true Remedy, and for mesquites, that's typically mixed with diesel.
Yeah, he suggests 25% Remedy, 75% diesel.
So that's 1 gallon of Remedy to 3 gallons of diesel.
Yeah,
and that's a basal treatment. You're going to spray that on the trunk of the plant. You're not going to spray that on the leaves. You're going to do the best you can to cover the trunk of it with it. It's absorbed in through the stem, I guess, and gets into the plant. And you need to do that at the best time of the year, I think he said, for doing the Remedy and diesel is anytime.
Yeah, anytime with the trunk. Yes.
Yes. With that treatment, so it's not a small window. You could spray it any time that you are. I have one landowner that I lease property from for cattle. He'll go out there, and his method, of course, everybody has the way they believe it should be done.
Sure, and all of them probably work.
He goes out there with a grubbing hoe and he chops a little mesquite off close to the ground and soaks the little stump with Remedy. And they never come back.
They can do that in the winter. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if they've never been manipulated, y'all.
Yes. Not one that's been shredded off or whatnot. Yeah.
And you can kill them young too, like single mesquites, that are just coming up there, or that aren't terribly old. The kicker is when they've been manipulated, like we said, if they've been top killed before. That's when chemical can still get them, but it might be a little harder to kill them. So
sure it will, because of the above ground
system.
mass, biomass. There's just not that much surface area up there to put chemical on in order to get it down into the plant.
Yes.
Yeah, and so like Chancey said, this chemical control is good for like a mesquite that's been growing straight up in the air for several years, or little young mesquites, they'll knock them down pretty quick. And these chemical controls that we're talking about, Remedy, it's not very selective to mesquites, right?
No, yeah, it's not.
It'll take out some off-target species.
Remedy's triclopyr base, and that's a woody plant killer, y'all. I mean, just about all your woody plant stuff has some type of triclopyr in it, and whether it be garland or you name it.
It'll take out the youpon too.
Yes,
what did you say a while ago? What is the rate on that?
It's like 5% Remedy Ultra, I believe, is what the state.
In water.
I think it's water. It may be diesel. I'll check on that. Let me just check on that to make sure. But for some reason, I was thinking it was just water. I think it was diesel was just the.
Some people
just the mesquite.
Some people will spray Remedy out with their pasture sprayers. I've seen this before, and of course I don't know if it's labeled for it or not. But we're owning this feed store that we have. People come in all the time, and the people who've been doing it for a long time, they have ways of doing stuff, and they're set in their ways, and that's fine because they work. I guess for what they do, So we have people who will put Remedy in like weed killer basically and go out and spray their pastures and stuff with it when the mesquites are so thick.
I'm sorry about that. I misspoke. It is diesel. Yeah, it is diesel.
But what is the
it's
rate?
It's the same, 25% diesel and 75% for the stem spray for youpon. Yeah.
25. So it's
Yeah,
1 to 3.
Yeah, same thing on the youpon. Yeah.
Okay. So so basically you
Yep.
can take this and it'll get rid of your mesquites and your youpon that way, and maybe even poison ivy.
Well, with Remedy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Remedy takes out a lot of your woody plants and vines.
I think it does.
It really does. Yeah, it takes out a lot. Like a
Your
lot
briars
of yeah, it really does. I think they probably have some other chemicals, that are specific to pastures. Like if you had a bunch of green briars, and that's probably a question we should ask Jason, like what do they recommend for woody pastures, when you got this encroachment coming in. But I'm sure a lot of them's triclopyr based or something, or there's some active ingredient there which is a type of, triclopyr is the active ingredient in Remedy.
Sure, it's just a trade name.
Yeah, it's just
Remedy.
a trade name. So, any of those things, like I said, I'm sure that there's even probably some restricted use chemicals that are specific, and I mean they get the job done, definitely. But from an all-around thing that, you can go to your local feed store, camera farm, and ranch.
No license
No
needed.
license. You can buy it on the shelf. It's safe to use. Yearly, Remedy is hard to beat, and so is that Sendero that we talked about.
Okay, so we're about to talk about Sendero.
Yeah, because Remedy is not as selective, whereas Sendero has it can be more selective. It'll take out the legumes, y'all.
And so Sendero has a label for spraying on through the air with like a airplane or some people use helicopters.
Yes, helicopters in South Texas.
Danged if people aren't starting to spray these things with drones.
That's what he said today, which blew my mind. I did not know. He said you got to get online and Google YouTube that. And I'm going to.
And I mean, this isn't like futuristic stuff. Apparently, there's a gentleman here in Cameron, Texas, that does it, and they're getting ready to go do a property this week where they're going to go spray 30 acres of solid mesquite with this drone.
Yeah.
And he said you map out your area. The drone knows the borders of the field.
Yeah.
Goes
GPS.
up there and gets it done, and it comes in, you reload it, and it goes back out there and goes to work again.
Wow. I mean, think about that. That's so cool. I can't wait to.
And
to
Sendero is a good chemical to do something like that because it's not as harsh on off target species.
Yeah,
like your oaks
and your elm trees,
pecans.
cedar elms. Yeah.
Yeah, if at the right rate and done the right way,
Yes.
you could spray over a whole pasture and it won't ding your oaks and your off target trees, but it'll take out these legumes.
Yes.
And the weeds in your pasture.
Yes, it's also and they recommend 1% to just mix Sendero with water
and the more foliage that you have on the mesquite plant, the better the time is to spray it.
Yes, because the Sendero's and y'all, if you read the label on these chemicals, like even Remedy, there's 1,000 different ways, the cut stump method, the stem spray, so read the label, but on the label, Sendero, you're killing it differently with Sendero. Sendero, you need it on the leaves, whereas Remedy, it needs to be on the bark.
On the bark.
Trying to get in the So the leaves need to be full and all open and doing really well.
It needs to be a manageable tree size that you could get over the top of.
Yes.
You're not gonna Sendero's probably not your ideal chemical if you're gonna do it by hand and you've got some 6-8 foot tall trees out there.
Yeah, that's gonna be difficult.
That's gonna be a Remedy deal there probably.
Probably so, the method. But they have Sendero on their label. They've got it for, like you say, you've got small mesquites. You can individual plant treatment, IPT it with 1% Sendero, so if you can get it, but you want the leaves there. You're spraying the leaves because that's how Sendero kills. It takes the poison from the leaves. It's on the leaves and it brings it down through the plant to kill it.
And the more leaves you got, the better it's going to work.
Yes, the more leaves.
Yeah, and it'll move that chemical from the above ground part of the tree down to the roots. And so this is an every other year treatment.
Yeah, there's some residual to it.
Jason said they've actually done studies on this where you spray it this year, next year they may shoot some new leaves out, but them leaves look really rough due to the fact that this Sendero chemical is still inside the plant and still working a year later. So it's not something you go spray every year. It's an every other year kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and you want to get it on just about every leaf on there because I've used this personally. Mm-hmm. If you miss a branch, that branch stays green for that year. Now the chemical's still moving down through the plant like it should, but and it did work good. And I think it took a 3-year period to do it.
Yeah,
we had to hit the ones that came back. But
it's a process, not a project.
That's right, it is.
And he also mentioned too, it'll be perfect time to spray Sendero in another week or two, something like that. A couple of weeks, didn't he say he thought it was
yes,
a little
he said
bit early
they'll
in his
be
mind?
fully
for Central Texas,
fully leaved and ready to be sprayed.
Yep.
Yeah, and he also mentioned this other new chemical that Bayer's coming out with that evidently, and the rate to that Sendero is going to be a 1% solution.
Yes.
So 1.28 ounces per gallon of water.
Yeah.
You can do the math from there, I guess.
Low volume. You know.
With a non-ionic surfactant, and the particular one, there's lots of them by different names, but the one that we carry here is Liberate. And so, that's at a quart per 100 gallons of water. So it doesn't take much of that at all. And that basically helps the chemical to get inside the leaves and go to work. Okay, so again, that's a 1% solution on Sendero. You got to spray it on the leaves and mixed with some surfactant there. So what was it again, the name of that last chemical that he said they just came out with?
Yeah, well, he said they just got it registered, and I'm not sure. Yeah, it just passed the EPA. It was called Invora, I believe.
And he was already going to use it this week.
Oh, that's what he was using, the Invora.
Yeah, he said he's going to use it on this place with this drone.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and he said it's supposed to be an excellent
it's
chemical.
restricted use, y'all. But like I said, a lot of these chemicals, some of the better ones that are low volume, are restricted use just because you need to be paying attention and doing, because they can be pretty potent. But this new Invora is supposed to just really smoke mesquites, evidently.
And there's no off-target issues here. Well, I guess there is some off-target issues depending on the species, but I don't think it hurts your oaks and your elms and your pecan trees. Aerial application is okay for it too.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't know hardly anything about it.
Yeah, it's brand new. We don't know much about it either. But again, that may be something that you look into.
Well, it's always, whatever you use, y'all, read the label. Read the label on it and follow the label. Don't think because it says 1 pint per 25 gallons that, 2 pints will be better. Yeah, don't.
No glug method.
Yeah, follow the label and put it out. Use accurate, calibrated equipment. If you're going to broadcast it with like ATV or UT with boom, calibrate it so you know what you're putting out.
This stuff's expensive too.
Yeah, and avoid overlap, especially if you're putting low volume stuff out.
Like these drones probably.
Yeah, low volume stuff. You want to be accurate, and not have overlap and everything like that. So.
And so it's expensive. If you could save money on overusing chemicals, it's definitely a good idea to do it too.
Mm-hmm. But if you're out there on your property and you're smaller or whatever, and you're spot spraying with a backpack sprayer on a UTV, those are your two options. Your diesel remedy mix, and your Sendero for leaf spray. And that's one method, that a lot of landowners are doing in their pastures right now. Most of them are on a UTV or a backpack sprayer or something, walking around spraying.
It's that time of the year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's good to know that
on your mind.
It's good to know that you could do the remedy, just about any time in the summer.
Yes, even in the winter.
Be just fine with it.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely right. So, Chancey, that about wrap it up with brush, bud?
Yeah, it really does. I do want to mention one thing right quick. There is no one chemical fix-all mix, and there's a million different kinds of chemicals with a million different active ingredients, and you go to the hardware store or the feed store, and you're like, what do you know? And you're trying to talk to people, but most landowners always have glyphosate in a form of triclopyr on hand.
Sure do.
Remedy or glyphosate, those two chemicals. So I just wanted to mention real quick, like I said, there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all, but for spraying
even like your prickly pear cactus and stuff, there's a restricted chemical
Tordon,
I ought to mention.
I believe.
Well, Tordon mixed with Tordon. I used to mix Tordon with something, but there's one called Surmount now.
Surmount, that's restricted use.
It is restricted use, and we've used it on prickly pear cactus, and it'll knock it down.
Sure.
But before we leave that topic, I guess I should mention Surmount for like your prickly pear cactus and some of your other species. If you're going to make a mixture for your fence lines or something like that, that'll work for that.
Yeah, and so like I said, there's a bunch of mixes out there that's specific, for certain things and very good for like around buildings or fence lines. But what I use on my fence line, because I always have it on hand, like I said, and it may not be the best, but I have it on hand and I don't have to go buy a bunch more, is there's a good mix with just glyphosate and triclopyr that you can mix and spray on fence lines, and it will kill, because triclopyr is more your woody brush in your plants, and then glyphosate's more your weed and grass. And just a good mixture of those mixed together at the proper rates.
You know the rate what you use for that?
What I do when I use it is I do the glyphosate at what it
1%?
says. Whatever, 4% sometimes, whatever you're trying to kill, and then mix it with the triclopyr. But the kicker is it forms a precipitate in high doses, like in high concentrations. If you mix glyphosate with triclopyr, it forms a precipitate and turns to powder, kind of like uric acid. So what you got to do, you got to mix it right. You got to like fill your tank up like 75% full of water,
right?
Then put your triclopyr in there
first,
then go in there and fill it and then add it. But if you're only doing a 2 or 3 gallon tank, you just but whatever the rate is, mix it correctly, and it's economical and it's low risk because triclopyr and glyphosate are fairly safe. They're not restricted. They're fairly safe. They don't have a residual in the soil, so most people
no soil activity.
Yeah, most people have them on hand. Like I said, they're not as good as some of those.
No license required.
No license required to buy it.
Yeah,
they're not as they're a little more economical sometimes. Like I said, they may not do as good a job long term as some of those like Surmount and stuff would. But it's something that I like to use because most of the time we have it on hand.
And then it gets your briars and stuff too.
Yeah, because I'll spray it on the fence line. It gets your grapevines, briars growing on fence lines. It kills your grass, and it keeps it dead for a while. So that's something I wanted to mention, just because I think, as you're spraying, around the house with glyphosate or around the barn, everybody has Roundup at some point, and then you're going to be spraying mesquite. You've got those 2 chemicals on hand. So
absolutely.
just be careful mixing them because you don't want it to form that precipitate.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And so that kind of wraps up this episode, I guess. There's a million other things we could talk about, but we done kind of gone over time again here today anyway. And so again, that's a little bit about mesquites and, different ways of controlling your different kinds of youpon brush and that type of thing. And so, it's good to be back with you guys again today. And I guess weather depending, we don't know where the week will take us this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're going to start harvesting wheat. We've been working on getting the combine out all week, so the wheat's about ready to start harvest around here. But as soon as me and Chancey get another free shot, we'll be back here to talk to you again.
Absolutely. And y'all, I guess just to summarize, remember, I know I've said it before, but just remember, brush management's a process. It's not a project. So, be thinking about it all the time and, be patient with it as well. And especially on some of these chemicals, be patient with, because some of them are slow acting. Like Jason was telling about the scenario, some of them are slow acting, and so just be patient with them and let them do their thing. But
yeah, and don't throw away what chemical you got left over because you're gonna need it again.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're not gonna knock it all out at one time. But the benefits, are there. It's worth the time to do it.
Sure is.
And so we appreciate you guys listening today, and I'm sorry it's been so long, but hopefully we'll be back with you again here soon. And until then, everybody stay well out there and stay safe and stay cool.
Y'all have a great week. Bye-bye.